Hello, everybody. Let's do some, hey, Roger or Roger. Can I, let's see if I can just share this one for a second. So today's gonna be a little tricky for me, man, because I had never done some braids. And so there's a bunch of different ways I think we can approach that. And the one that I like the most is one tutorial I watched on YouTube. It kind of gave like a nice little workflow to be able to actually bring curves and transform into them into guides in XGen, and then use those guides to drive the entire thing, right? The cool thing is that the guys I've seen like having the best results, like for braids, they're using nHair from Maya. So basically, like it's the hair system that comes with Maya, and this one works very nicely with the paint effects. So it's a combination of like nHair, paint effects, and then there is a parameter in there that's basically like a checkbox. You just check and say, oh, I want some braids, and then boom, you get braids for free. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if I remember all the steps, but I can try. And but we're also going to be talking about obviously the way that we're going to be adding the regular hair, if that's the case, right? Like if you want to see a lot more about how I approached the long hair, if you're doing long hair, the class of July that you guys have access, when I model my wife, I did the whole hair like using tons of curves to block the entire thing out, and then I basically like hand sculpted a lot of stuff afterwards, but at least to get the whole block. And I'm gonna be doing some of that in here as well, but also exploring that possibility of using the braids, right? The interesting thing about the braids that I was looking is that it creates a braid that starts like all the way from it's the whole extension of the curve basically. So for me to tackle that, I was thinking about like, for example, generating those curves, starting from the scalp, for example, but then at some point just like undoing it, you know, so it's just removing a bunch of vertices, rebuilding the curves, and then making it in a way that actually the braids start around here, and then around here I can start simply like untangling them and then placing them in different spots in the head, you know, because at this point here, for example, like what I have blocked here as a, you know, as a just like a temporary object in there, basically like starts all the way from the middle here, right? And it's this gigantic thing. So basically like all the hair, the entire hair becomes only like 3 strands, right? That are gonna be braided around here. So again, I'm gonna have to make sure that, for example, like I have enough hair spread out all over the place. And that's gonna be the tricky part, to make sure that the hair starts at the scalp and runs all the way down into the braids. Like the entire thing has to do this for both sides. That's gonna be the tricky part, because when you're working with the hair in general, sometimes if it's a very simple haircut, for example, like you're working on someone with a very like with shaved hair, right? Like some like you know, it's like one of those rappers, right? And you have like the very shaved hair and everything. You can get away with like not a lot of curves to block the direction and everything, because it's short hair, so you can get a lot done that way. But if it's something that has like a lot of details, for example, like a ponytail or you know, some kind of like a designed kind of like hairstyle, right? Then you're probably going to have to add a ton of curves. And there is no way out of that, you know, because the way that XGen works is with interpolation, right? So you have to understand that, for example, like if you add a curve right here in this area, and you have another one around here, those two are going to interpolate to whatever direction you're going to use. So for example, if I bring both into a point in here, everything in between, one point that stuff is going to start like intersecting with the scalp, because basically like he's going to try to interpolate in the middle here, and there's not enough information, right? So sometimes like if you're sculpting something that you need like a woman's hair to just like have like one specific area that goes and turns around and makes like a curve or whatever, you have to make sure that you have enough of those splines around a bigger area so they can all interpolate and create that effect. Because if you have just one of them here and another one is very spread out around here, you're never going to get that effect, because you don't have enough guides in the small area, you know, it's like to create that effect. So we have to make sure that you have a ton of them at the end. But in his case here, like I said, maybe I can get away with having less splines, just because everything comes from the center so the scalp in here, and goes into the braids. And also, obviously, the hair is not starting just from the center, right? Like I have to put like a row probably like around the center, another one around here, another one around here, all the way to the side until I get like the entire, like, you know, enough splines in there to bring them into this point here. So I'm gonna just like hide this one. I can actually use it just as a guide to paint a mask. So let's do this. Let's just hide everything but those two objects. Switch camera here. And again, I'm gonna be trying this because I'm kind of new to the whole braid things here in Maya, but we might be able to do it. So let's see. Let's just select this, and I'm gonna paint a mask around this area here. Just have an idea. So let's get this. Before I can do that, let's just make everything symmetrical. So let's do symmetry on topology. And then let's pick the middle line. Boom. So now we're symmetrical. Let's go to the selection B. Left mouse click and then drag just to get it smaller. And then let's see if it's working. Yeah, symmetry is working. So let's start something like this. I'm gonna do the opposite way. I'm just gonna do it like that. Just having a little base in here. Do this, then I can grow my brush. Do something like that. Do the opposite here. So basically, I'm gonna mask the entire thing. Let's see if that works. So something like that. Then I'm gonna obviously have to get the ear. So I'm doing the reverse here, basically like selecting this stuff just to get that line in there. And I can complete it. Okay, let's switch to selection mode like this, and let's do a face. And then select everything that's inside here with shift. Shift control, sorry. Shift control, just add this to the selection. And then let's see if we can get away with that. So let's hide this guy here. Page, back to face. And let me just finish the selection here. So let's get the lasso. And Control Shift, get the ear completely in. That too. Yeah, something like that. And then let's bring this all the way to the base of the head right here. Let's see if I got everything. Oops. Did I get the eyes as well? Should make sure here. Let's see. And the rest of the ear. Okay. So now I can just press, I believe it's just Shift and then click around the whole thing. So I basically like inverted the mask, right? So now I have a mask just for my scalp in there. It's starting with that point in there. Just make sure I have all these little gaps there filled. In his case here, I mean, like his hair, he's not gonna have like, for example, like huge sideburns or anything like that. His hair is probably gonna go all the way here, gonna start going over his ear before he goes to the braids. So I'm basically gonna use Control here just to eliminate some of that. And around here too, is just like eliminate some of that stuff. And we're gonna, there are like different types of, different options when you're doing this kind of stuff. Like one of them is to actually create a copy of those faces and then groom the copy and never touch this model again, right? And then you're gonna have to do like shrink wrap all the time to actually make sure that it conforms if you're changing your model. But then in my case here, I'm always using the actual model to do the grooming. It's like it's an option, you know, it's like some people prefer one way or the other way. I like grooming the actual model. So I think like that's a good starting point. Maybe you're gonna go shorter here. I think I went too exaggerated. Let's do shorter. And then probably around this area here, not too close. Starting here actually starts like getting a little bit more separated from the ear. So I have less hair. And obviously like with the hair, his hair is gonna be pretty long. It's gonna probably cover that entire area, so I don't need to worry about it, right? So that's basically what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna use this to create my description, right? And then normally what we do, let's do like just a simulation here. Again, like I can do that trick, you know, it's like to unlock this area later on if I want to transfer things, right? Like just transfer, export and then re-import just to unlock it. But in this case here, just a little bit more of that. Let me just create a description here. So let's do this first. Let's do a create interactive. Let me just double check if I don't have any holes in there. Looks good. So create interactive groom splines, and I'm just gonna name it nHair. Is that your original? And then for the hair itself, I mean, like, if you research the interwebs, for example, like number of follicles in human head or scalp, scalp or head, whatever. Let's see what it brings in here. So it says total follicle, blah, 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 hair follicle. Let's see, number of, I can just do it simpler than that. Number of hairs in human head, on a human head. So it says that's about 100,000 hair follicles. That's about like the average. It says, yeah, 100,000. But I've noticed like in some other stuff, like I noticed like about like 150,000. So it's something in between 100 and 150,000. Obviously, like in this case here is an older guy. He probably like lost some of his hair like in the hairline here, so it's a little bit less than that. So I can take that in consideration and then make a little bit less than 100,000. Just like, you know, let's see if I crank this one to density 200, that's 100,007. That should be good actually. Maybe a 195, let's see. Still 180. Yeah, better. So 97,000, gonna go with that. And then since it's gonna be long hair, the CV count, I normally keep it pretty high. So like, let's say like 200 or even 300. So I'm gonna keep this, let's keep it like something like 200 for now. And this is gonna be a mess, right? The length is gonna be, let's keep it like, maybe like 1 here for length, just as initial thing. And it's gonna look pretty messy. So let's see what happens. So now it's gonna, you know, it's just the short hair there, right? I got the little buzz cut in there. And then the basically like the length of them are gonna be defined by the guides themselves. So that's why I don't worry too much about the length. You can start even shorter than this. It should be totally fine, right? So right now he has this military cut in there. And then you can start styling from here, right? Like if you don't want to use any guides, you can at any time just like start brushing things around and create the effects you want. So for example, if I have a sculpting here, right? You can at any time just like start brushing stuff around. Now it's going to be tricky because I have a lot of steps, right? Like I have 300 in there, so that's going to be pretty heavy. So I think what I can do, I can rebuild them to be much lower than this for now, but you see I can start brushing straight away, right? Now again, after he calculates, it goes a little faster, but this is if you don't want to use any guides, right? You can totally do something like, you know, like start brushing stuff around without any guides, but it's very, you know, hard to control things. So we need to block things out first. Let's undo this stuff. And then if you want to rebuild this, so you have like less steps to deal with, and so it's like a faster interaction, you can click at the main base, like the nHair base here. And if you scroll down here, the CV count, you can just say like 32 instead, right? So I'm gonna rebuild with 32. And it rebuilds fairly fast. So let's see how long it's gonna take. So still thinking, it's just a lot of them. Thank you, yeah, it's done. So now let's see if it's a little bit faster. Again, like it's gonna be just the kickstart that's gonna be a little bit slow, but then from that point on, it becomes faster. So that's good. So with 32, you can start having a little bit of an idea about it. So yesterday when I mentioned, you know, using the guides, the way you would approach here, it would be like just like start the same way we did yesterday. So I would get like a main hair, I would add a modifier, I would add a guide modifier. And then inside of the guide modifier, I would do that thing that I did yesterday, which was, we can actually even hide this main thing here. So the guide modifier, just do like a create input. And that would give me all those lines, right? And then I could do the exact same thing I did yesterday. I would click on the sculpt part of the guide itself, click edit, right? And I could just, or actually in the guide itself here, go under the, let's see, where is it? Oh, sorry. I would click the density tool, and then under this guy here, I would simply get the tool settings, and then I would flood it. So set the operation to 0, basically, right? Like value 0, set, and then I would just do a flood. So that would eliminate all those lines. And now I could just like click this guy here and then place them by hand. So that's basically what we did yesterday. So I would click 1 here. And then let's see if we got anything placed in there. Oh, I have to click, sorry, you have to click the guide itself, otherwise it doesn't do anything. So got 1 in there, right? And then that little guide, I can actually grow it. So I would just do that. Oops, the opposite. Grow it like that. And then I could interpolate, put another one around. I can actually do in mirror as well, right? Like you can always use this guy here in mirror. So we just get the symmetry here on for object. And then you could do another, you know, we can do like in mirror like that. And then at the end, you would have like a bunch of those. You can change the size and everything interpolates, right? So that's the way you would normally approach if you're not having to deal with the braids. But in the case of the braids, we're gonna have to do it in a different way. So let's just do this just as a test here. Just bring those guys to the side and see what kind of amazing haircut we're gonna get if you have something like this, right? So if I turn on my main hair back, so now I have that split in there, right? So that's what I'm saying about interpolation. We have way too little, we need much more of those guides to be able to control larger areas, right? Right now, even though I don't have any guides in here, you see that the XGen is still trying to interpolate, right? But as soon as we start putting more in here, get more and more control over this entire area, and everything interpolates in between them, right? So I don't have anything in between here, but those two are following the same direction, so we get the interpolation in the middle. So that's the way it's gonna work. So, of course, at this point here, I'm just messing around with this just to give an idea, right? And then obviously you're gonna be doing like your own combing in there and doing the whole thing. But just to have an idea about how this whole thing works. Now for the braids, the approach is gonna be different. You see, like when I create this one, I added my guides by hand in here, and they are all inside of XGen. I didn't use any curves from mine or anything like that, right? But in our case, since we're gonna be doing this, let's just hide all this crap for now. So you see, we can hide just the guide itself, right? So it eliminates that effect. So we're gonna hide the whole thing. And then even the guides in here, so I'm gonna hide this one as well. And we're gonna have to work with splines. I'm gonna have to create some splines here because I wanna attach the nHair system to it and the paint effects so I can actually get to those braids. So based on what I was watching and checking, you know, it's like the way that those guys were doing, it seems pretty straightforward, but obviously there's a little things in there I have to pay attention. But so the way I approached was like this. So I'm just gonna create a couple of like curves in here. Actually, just one curve I think you're gonna create for each side first. And then from that curve, I'm gonna generate more curves. And then those curves are going to be attached to different points of the head. And I think that should do the trick. And then obviously everything is going to be, you know, it's like I can add more guides later on by interpolating them with whatever I'm going to be generating with nHair. And I guess that's going to be the approach, and I'm hoping for the best. So let's check this thing out. So first thing I'm going to do, I can actually make my object live with this. Just click the little magnet. So now it's live. That means like any curve I draw in here is going to be attached. We're going to snap to the surface, right? So I can start with my modeling tools here. I can go to create. And under curve tools, I can just say like EP curve tool. And then I can start with something like, let's do like an average of the entire hair, right? If I'm starting like the front around here and the back around here, I'm gonna try, this is just me guessing here, something that's kind of in the middle. So something around here. And I'm gonna draw it coming behind the ear with a couple of steps here, but not many. And then I'm gonna go over the shoulder around here. And then later I can actually extend it and make it longer, right? But they're just gonna attach right there. So to have an idea. So I'm gonna press enter. So now I have my curve attached to the surface. Now I can uncheck this guy here. So basically I'm gonna, you know, make it not live, so I can actually select the model. So I can select the curve as well. So let's right click away from the curve. So I selected the curve only, right click around here, for example, and then you just say control vertex. And then you can just like pull this stuff away from the surface here. So let's do that. Let's bring this guy out slightly. Select a bunch of those vertices in there. Gonna deselect that one. Oh, not this guy, man. Come on. Select this one here. Around here. And then I probably not gonna have a ton of like waviness. I think I have to come a little bit more straight based on the reference I'm looking, but I mean, all this stuff we can tweak later as well. I just wanna make sure I'm following the surface fairly okay here. There is also an option that you can actually make this whole thing dynamic, so you actually follows the surface. You can make this whole thing a collision object. So basically, like the braid itself is going to collide with the object. But I don't think we're going to need for this guy here. But it's a very cool option you have as well, you know, especially if you have like low resolution meshes. Otherwise, the collision can be a little slow to calculate sometimes. But I was thinking about something like this, you know, it's like, so for example, something that would be like the average, maybe even, you know, if I can make it live again if I need to move the root in there. So I'm gonna make it live again. I'm gonna select the curve again, and I'm gonna drag this one across the surface here, so it snaps in there. So maybe around here would be better, something like that. And then uncheck that again, so it's not live anymore. And then I can move this one a little bit closer here, maybe towards the back, and maybe a little bit more of a curve like that. Something like that. So yeah, so that would be the first step, right? And then I think like for the other side, I think I was thinking about like doing a mirror version, but I think I'm gonna do like a freestyle, just like do it again, just like to have something that's different and it's not gonna be, you know, it's like a mirror, an exact mirror. So let's do this. I could potentially like duplicate the curve itself and flip it, but I think I'm gonna do this way here. Let's just make it live again. And I'm gonna add another line. So starting, let's see, I can even use it like from the other side. So that's my camera here. We are using side -X. So let's see my orthographic here. Side new, let's see, side right, I believe. Let's see. No, that's right. Okay, panel, perspective, new. Sorry, orthographic, new, left. So let's try this one. And let's make, let's press 4 so I can see the other side. And now that this thing is live, I can just like click in a very similar spot. And then just reproduce a little bit of that, but then I'm gonna change so it's not like a perfect mirror. Let's get that. Then around here. All right, something like that. Let's uncheck that one, not live anymore. Control vertex. Let's get all this stuff to move away from the head a little bit. Around there, here. Yeah, maybe this guy here is gonna come around here. Slightly different. And yeah, this guy here could actually have, you know, coming more towards the center. maybe a little longer. Okay, something like, maybe it's a little bit too close to the center. Let's get this. It has to make some sense, right? Like it has to have some weight and give the impression that it's actually resting on his shoulders in there. So like I have to make sure that that impression is created. But I can still manipulate this stuff as long as I don't break the connections. So now we have those two curves. So the way we're gonna work with this is like this. I hope I can actually do, when I generate the curve that's gonna attach to the entire thing, I hope it works that way, but we're gonna see. We're gonna have to check it out. So let's see, if I click this one here and the head as well, actually I believe I can create both of them at the same time. So let's click both and the head. And let's switch to effects in here. I'm also gonna switch to my outliner so we can see what we are doing here. So right now I just have those two curves. You can even move them closer here. So that's gonna be like a left curve and then right curve. So click both of them. Let's see, I think it does at the same time. And then let's just do nHair. And then we're gonna say, make selected curves dynamic, right? So I select the head and both the splines. By default, it's just like NURBS curves in here, but switch to paint effects and NURBS curves. And then keep those default options on. So attach curves to select surface and exact shape match, and then you just apply it. Actually, before we do this, let's rebuild those curves, because right now, the number of spans is very spread out, right? And it's not gonna work very well if we have like too little, you know, spaced vertices in there. So let's just rebuild it. Just to rebuild it, you can just go to modeling and go to curves. And then you can just say rebuild in here. And then you can give a number. So for example, like I have 30 by default in there. In my case, I can, I think I can keep 30. Let's do 30 here. And then this one 30 as well. So now if I right click and I look at the control vertices, I have like an evenly spaced, right? So it's a nicer looking spline in there. So let's go back to where we are at. So let's select both, the head, back to effects. And then we're gonna go back to nHair and make the selected curves dynamic. Paint effects, blah, blah, blah. So everything is attached. So now I have like a system. I have like a hair system in here. And my hair guides, they're actually put inside of those, you know, those groups in there, right? So I have the follicle. I have two different follicles I have for the left and the right. If I click on one of the follicles and I go to the attribute editor in here, you're gonna see that I have a hair system for it, right? And if you, basically like if you open this first one here, first tab, it says clump and hair shape. You have like hairs per clump, and you have the clump width. So I'm gonna do, for example, like I'm gonna add a bunch here. I don't know how many you're gonna need to be able to spread them out, you know, it's like across the full head, but maybe I can start with 20. And then for the clump width, I can just like, oh, actually, sorry, I have to attach my, my paint effects first. So let's do this. So I'm gonna click on the nucleus, I believe. Let's see if that's what it is there, or the hair system. I think it's the nucleus. And then for the hair, I can just say assign paint effects brush to hair. Is it the, maybe it's the hair system. I think it's the hair system. Yeah, sorry. Hair system, and then assign paint effects to brush to hair. Okay, so now let's try that again. Hairs per clump, let's try to add more. Then the clump width, I got this. So let's try, like the number I said before was 20. Maybe 20 is gonna be enough. It's hard to tell because I have to actually, my plan is to actually grab the tips of them and then spread all over the head and then try to come up to a point around there. But I'm not sure if that's gonna be enough, you know. I guess I can, you know, play with it later. So let's try maybe like 30. Maybe it's gonna be hard to control. Yeah, let's keep 20 only, that's it. And then, so clump width, I can actually increase, you know, it's like here if I want to, I can put like 2, right? And make something a little bit wider like that, right? And then there's this thing here. So for each one of those follicles, if you click in one of them, and you go to the, actually to the hair shape, let's see if it's, man, where is it? There is a follicle shape right here, braid. So that's this, basically like for each one of those follicles, you have this, right? Click this one, you have braid, you have this one with another braid in there. So look at the magic here. If everything goes well, you get automatic braids in there, right? For this one, I'm gonna click the other one, and then braids. And then now I have braids, and then as planned, basically like around here, actually gonna have to untangle them starting around here, I believe, to make it look cooler for my character. But then there are all kinds of cheats, right? Obviously, another way to cheat this would be to basically have them created in a way that actually, you know, it's like they just like, I can hide the rest of it. For example, like create like straight lines, basically like the hair would be straight all the way to a point. Hide, for example, with a tie, something like a little object, I can actually hide everything. And then you start growing this stuff here from an isolated plane, for example, like a different object, just like a little, you know, it's like a plane, like a circle plane, and then have the braids hanging from them instead of like hanging from his own head, right? But the way that I'm building here is kind of like trying to build as if it was like in real life, right? Like basically like starts from the scalp and then becomes the braid. So that's gonna be my personal challenge here to see if that works. But in terms of the way you generate them, that's basically it. Look at that. So at this point here, what they are just paint effects. So they're not useful for us because we cannot render them with, you know, it's like in Arnold with XGen, right? We need the XGen to be able to control all this stuff. So I think you're gonna have to do a couple of things. First, we're gonna have to transform them into curves, right? That's why I have 20 in each side. So I can actually have a little bit less of a hard time like building a ton of them. Maybe I can actually go even lower than that if I realize that's too much. And let's see, for example, like if I go around here, let's see if I bring down, let's see how many I get per strand. For example, I have 3 of them. So let's try 9. And let's see if it actually creates 2 per strand here, or if it's kind of random. It's hard to tell. A little hard to tell. And then for the sub-segments in here, you can actually increase as well. So if I add, for example, like 30 in here, right? Now it gets this nicer curvature, right? And then it's kind of, it is a little hard to see what they're doing there. So I guess I'm gonna have to be very selective when I'm actually working with them inside of XGen. So I'm gonna keep my 20 original one in there, like that. And then now let's do this. Let's see if we can convert this. So if you click the PFX hair one, so this node in here, you can actually go now and go to your modify, and you have to convert those curves to actually they are, you know, at this point here, they are just paint effects, right? So you have to convert the paint effects to curves. So you can just click that button, and then now they are all curves. They are probably inside of this new node that was just created here, a new group. If you expand it, each one of them now it's a curve. So we should have 40. It actually gave us 42 for some reason. Actually 40, it just started with curve 3 number. Okay, so it's 40. So, I mean, like my intention is to actually have those little roots in here placed in different spots, and maybe like a little untangle starting from here, but that's gonna take me time to do, right? It's something I'm gonna have to do probably like that, not during the class, but what we're gonna do now, we're gonna just show the whole concept to you guys. So basically we're gonna try to do as much as possible. And then obviously the boring part I'm gonna save you, which is gonna be like me taking my sweet time and actually placing each one of them manually, right? So let's see this. If I just hide the PFX here, so I am hiding the PFX hair, which is the paint effects, right? PFX, and I have just my curves in there. So the intention basically is to do this. Oh, I'm gonna have to rebuild them because look at that. It's generating a ton of, look at that, man. There's a lot of nodes in there, lots of little control vertices. So let's rebuild some of them so we don't need to use all of that. It's a little bit too much. So I can select all of them. And let's go back to our modeling, curves, rebuild. And maybe like, let's keep like our original idea of having 30, maybe a little bit more on that, like maybe, I think 30. So we can just start like that. Let's see. Okay, so now, yeah, easier to control that way, right? It didn't lose a lot of the shape. I think the shape looks fairly okay. So using that same principle of the, the making the object live, I can try that again. So click the object and then click live. And then now if I click in any of those curves, I can actually snap it to surface. So I would have to pick, it's like my poison here and see, it's like how I'm gonna entangle this. Probably like I'm gonna have to start around here and then do this for each one of those strands to actually, oops, it's moving away too far there. Let's try this. Oops, not gonna work for me. I think there's some history attached to it. That's another thing I can do. I can actually basically detach the whole history, unless you want to make things dynamic, and that's not the case in here. I just want the curves. I don't want them to be dynamic. I don't need that. So let's just select this stuff here, all those curves, and I'm gonna delete the history. See, I hope I don't screw up the whole thing by doing that, but I think we are safe because you just need the curves. So let's do that, and I'm gonna just ungroup here, Shift P, skip them outside. And I'm gonna select all this stuff, and I'm gonna delete the history as well. And now I can delete them. Right, so now I just have the curves themselves. That's all that matters to me at this point. So let's see again if that's gonna work with the live object. Yeah, so now it's actually going to snap very nicely. So yeah, for each one of those roots, I'm going to have to actually find where I want to start, right? And it can be like any place actually, as long as the strands, I'm going to have to follow the curvature of each one of them and see the ones that have to start in a similar spot, right? Although it can be random as well. I mean, like if you grab a bunch of hair and then you just split with your hands, right? Like basically it can be anything. It can be starting any point, I suppose. But I'm not a specialist in braids, so that's basically like my plan is to do something like this and then go with each one of those guys here. Once I have them snapped to there, I can just turn off my magnet, and then I can come with those guys and make like a straighter and straighter. For example, like if I want to bring a line that starts right here, and then undo that braid in there and make it more of a curve all the way down around here. It's like going to be just undoing that. And then when I get to the other chunks, and they're going to have to be very careful, obviously, to make sure that things make sense. But yeah, so this is basically the idea. For each one of those guys here, 20 in each side, I'm going to have to do this and plan my sculpture. I'm going to have to sculpt the hair, right? So it's definitely going to take some time to do that. But let's see how XGen would operate. Once let's pretend we have all this stuff attached to different spots of the hair here, and how that would work out. Actually, we can do a few of them just to keep them close enough to the place we want to have. Let's make this one live again. And I'm just going to pick some of them. So this guy here, going to put more towards the center. Around here. Maybe back a little bit. And then let's unlock it. And then if you just press like the arrow to the side, you can go to the next vertex. So you can get to that guy faster. So we're going to do that. Bring it around here. And then obviously you're going to have to plan the direction of the hair. So I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to here, maybe a little higher. With down now, I can just select the next one. Something like that. Closer to the head. And then all the way, it's like until you get like a nice little shape in there. Once I have this stuff all in place, before I even move to XGen, I think the best thing to do is to actually rebuild them again. So the distribution between the vertices is equal, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have like those big spaces in there, and that might not be that ideal, right? So it's good to just like rebuild to create something more interesting. So basically, like, you get the drill in here, right? The base, like adding direction for it. I can even make this area here sag a little bit, so go a little bit under the line of the ear in here, and then from this point on, go up again to go over the ear, something like that. I can have more control points. So, for example, I could bring this one closer in here and have this one going up, so I can have a little bit more control points around here, and then bring this one to all the way there. So there are all kinds of stuff, right? Like, just like, you know how to work with the NARBs. You probably already did this before. So let's bring this one up around here, but not too high, because it has to have some gravity over the ear. Bring this guy here, and this guy around there. And then that's basically my idea, you know, for like all those guys. Like I said, I never did this before with braids, but I think that's the way I'm gonna approach. You know, it's like get to a point here that they just like merge all together, and basically like from this point up, the braids is undone, right? It just like becomes like straight hair basically. So yeah, so I have one in here. I have another one in the back, so we can actually see how they're gonna interpolate. Just to have some interpolation in there, because like I said, you have to plan interpolation much better than what I have right here. But just to see how they interpolate. I'm gonna save the scene because I don't wanna lose the stuff I did here, because I'm definitely gonna reutilize this and start working from here. So let's do this file save. Let's do scenes. It's funny that like we are already like file 33 and I'm still calling it test. So let's just do, I'm gonna call it something different. Braids. And then I can even do like 1, okay? We reset the counter. It's like a brand new life now. Okay. Would be cool if I put like a long beard from this point on and a tall hat, you know, so I can turn him into a rabbi. Oh man, it looks like a, what's the name of that guy? He's a rapper, like a rabbi rapper. It's so funny. I don't remember the name of the guy. I remember he was big in many years ago. Okay, so it's still saving.
That's Matsiahu.
Yes, that's right. Oh man, you're Jewish, right? So you know that guy.
I know. My buddy.
Your buddy, yeah, exactly. That's awesome, man. Okay, so so now we have this stuff here. Let's see if we can convert this stuff into you know, something we can use with XGen. And in theory, it should be very simple, but with XGen, there's always a possibility of failure. So let's just group everything. So I select all the curves, gonna press group in here, just for, you know, to easily control it. So let's see, all curves, and maybe I can even split them within that, you know, separate the left from the right, so it's easier. But so let's see what we do here now. So remember, I already created a new definition in here, right? Like a new description. So I have all that crazy hair right there, but there is no attachment to any curves at this point, right? And as you remember, you know, it's like at some point, actually, we create this in guide in here. And the way that we created was just by clicking this one, like the input guide, right? We're just like creating there. I'm gonna delete it now. I'm gonna remove everything that we did afterwards, which was basically like those little lines, right? So we create that little effect in there. So I'm gonna basically eliminate them here by deleting it. So I'm gonna create guide, delete. And now we are back to 0. So there are no guides attached to anything. And we're gonna attach those curves in here as guides, right? So the way to do that, if I'm not mistaken, is you select all the curves first. You know what, it would be cool actually to create 2 different sets. I think that would be actually cool. But I don't know if it would be useful when you're trying to do like an overall look for the hair. But I mean, like I was thinking of even like splitting in the middle, you know, it's like in creating 2 different descriptions, but I think it's not a good idea because I need to control all of them evenly, like add like flyaways and stuff like that later on. So I'm gonna keep it the way it is. So I'm gonna select all the curves in here. And then with that, you go back to your hair, like to the XGen tab. And then I'm gonna control click guide. So when you do that, so first select all the curves and then control click guide. Now you have that option to create, right? Which is basically what we were doing all this time. And you have this option here that use selected curve as guide. So let's click that one. And then it says preserve dynamic link. I'm gonna keep it on, you know, but at this point you already broke that link, because remember, like we did the dynamic curve. This is if you want to create animation, right? Like you can totally like keep things animated based, like it goes like all the way from nHair, paint effects, then the conversion to the curves to Arnold, and carries the whole thing, like the animation is carried all the way to Arnold and XGen. So that's pretty cool that you have the option. But in our case, because you already deleted the whole definition, I don't think you even need this. So I'm gonna actually turn it off, because if it saves me some memory, is good. So let's try this, apply and close. It should take some time because we have a ton of hair now. And then if that works, and if we have something that we can actually see what's going on, oh, there you go. Aha. You see, it's a mess because we don't have enough coming from the same, like from a similar spot, like I was saying before, right? So I think, let's see, let's reduce. First, we're gonna add more steps. So let's try that first. So let's go to my transform here. I think I have enough steps, do I? Yeah, I think I have enough steps. It's just that a matter of like really planning this. You see around here, you can kind of see the braid in there, but because it's coming from different places of the scalp, that's gonna be a little hard to plan. It's almost like the easiest way for me to cheat this would be like to grow it from a very small area of the scalp, and then use the regular ones to actually just you know, blend into it like manually. But I don't know. Let's try. Let's try to. We have like CV count of 33. Can I actually change this at this point? I don't think we can. I think we have to actually rebuild the curves and then do it again. No, we actually did. We actually obeyed what I said in there. But look at that, man. It's so funny because we don't have like good plan coming from there. It's actually blending from all over the place. Around here, it kind of like works, but then it gets very lost because there is not enough stuff like to yeah. I think the ones that messed up the most are the ones that I actually brought up. So it's a matter of like really spreading them correctly and getting things to work. So let's try that. Let's do some work in there. Let's see what we can do. Also, let me just reduce the number of guides in here. Let's see if that's gonna give us a little bit of, let's see, where is it? Main hair, this guy here. Density, let's try 0.2. I just wanna see how they are following those lines. Yeah, I can kind of see that around there they are working, but then those ones are going wild and trying to follow them, but without the solid base in there. Look at that. So yeah, that's gonna take a lot of work, just like really doing exactly what I was mentioning before, kind of like bringing things in spreading around the whole head, because what's happening right now is that the whole head was actually emitting hairs, right? So like it's coming from the entire scalp, but then the area that I have the braids is very small. So I have to make sure that I get them to, you know, to connect to all of those spots. So I know that the concept in here is gonna work. It's just a matter of like really putting that huge amount of work to actually put them in place in the head. But yeah, so I guess what we're gonna do, now that I show you guys how to do this, we're gonna spend the rest of the time trying to get a better result at the end of the class by, you know, it's like doing the right thing, right? Like just like really putting them like in different places here where you can actually get the most of the head. Now, another thing we can try here, let me just, I can try just as a test to start things from a single spot, like I mentioned before, and see if the guides work. before you go crazy with like spreading things around the head. So let's try that. So let's do the guiding here. I'm gonna delete. All right, so we're back to that spot. And then what I can do, I can delete this guy from here. Don't need it. And then I can actually, even like the main hair in here, actually let's just hide it because I might use later. But let's see this side here, for example, since we have it close enough to the surface of the head, let's do another definition in here, create another one. Gonna deselect everything and no need for the symmetry. Let's try this. Let's just select an area that's very close to where they're starting, just as a test. Because even that, if everything goes wrong with the rest, if this works, I can find a way to actually blend them and cheat the transition, you know. But if I have something like this, let's see what happens. Ideally, I would have them pretty close to the surface as well, right? Still a little sloppy here in my approach, but let's try. So create interactive groom, and let's do like a test braid. And then obviously like the amount of splines, I don't need a whole lot in here. I'm gonna keep like, how many should I do? Like, I don't know, 100 here, let's say 1400. Okay, let's try that. In CV count, I have like 200. I'm gonna make like 64 only, let's see. Apply. So now I have that tiny little chunk in there, right? And we're gonna do the same thing we just did. So we're gonna click on it, expand. First thing, you're gonna add a modifier. And it might be completely busted when I finish, but it's a good test to do. So guide, right there. And then let's do that whole thing. So I'm gonna select the curves just on this side here and see what we can do with it. Select those guys and then select the guide with control. And then I'm gonna say, use curve as guide. Now it's a much better thing, right? It's not as messy as before. So that's something it might be a little bit more useful, I suppose. You see, like those guys in here, for example, we didn't have any curves close enough for them to interpolate. And that's what was happening when we had that huge mass happening with the whole head, which is kind of nice to see, actually, just to understand what happens, right? It's just because we need enough guides connecting to enough spots in the whole head for XGen to be able to interpolate everything. That's why it was a mess, because it was trying to interpolate from here, for example, that has no curves whatsoever, all the way to here. And that's basically the type of effect we were getting. You know, it's like, this was like across the board everywhere. So let's do a test actually and see how this thing renders, because I don't think I ever did this, right? So it would be nice to see how he interpolates. Doesn't seem like the braids are looking great in there, but it might be just an impression. I think render might look cool. So let's see. Let's set it up here, a quick render with my sky dome and the forest. It's 2. And then let's add some shader as well. So let's try with some mess in there. Let's select the eyebrow as a starting point. Graph. So that's the eyelashes. Actually, the eyebrows are using the eyelashes shader, so not a great start in there. But I'm gonna just duplicate it. So Control D, and I'm gonna name this one like a braids or something. Braids 1. And then this guy here, I can actually assign to this guy. So, bam. Again, if it didn't work, if you saw something like that, it's because this hair physical shader is actually not working for us there. You can just like select the last tab, click select, and then delete. Then if you do it again, it should work now. So now it should be dark, right? So we have like black hair in there. I think the only thing I changed was actually the specular. The specular is probably not great. I'm gonna be tweaking it again, but I'm noticing that we still don't have a lot of steps in here, right? So let's see if it's possible to change the steps at this point that something is attached to it. I'm not sure if it is actually. We have 64. Let's try 200 here. Yeah, it's actually working. So I was able to add more steps in there. Okay, good. Good to know. And then for the guides, same thing. I'm gonna try to rebuild here with more. So like a 200. Yeah, interesting. Okay. I think there's a way for us to keep it tighter with that, by the way. And then let's just tweak that shader that I mentioned. So braids, let's add some of the roughness. So let's do like maybe like 200 or even 300. So it's 250. And index of refraction, let's keep at 1.5 or something like that. So it's a little shinier because we want to be able to see it. And no anisotropic, that's just that. And then let's do a little quick render test. Yeah, this was kind of like, you know, it's like I could have planned this better. For example, like coming with those curves more into a point and planning like this area here to be a little larger at the top. There are modifiers you can use even before you export the curves. Within Paint Effects, you can actually use those to actually create a better shape than what I had, you know. What I did was kind of like fast just to show, so we had enough time to show during the class. But I'm planning to actually go back and then do a little bit more carefully, you know, so I can get a better result in there. But again, like if this works in here, nothing stops me from, for example, like grooming a hair that comes straight and then somehow just blends into it, you know. It's like I could potentially just like bring those guys in, you know, as just like hide them basically like in the middle of the hair there. I could do that, but it's just a matter of like, you know, should I do that? I don't know. Still have to think about it. Let's see, perspective. I'm just gonna turn off my depth of field because right now I'm getting this lots of depth of field in there. So let's turn it off. So turn off depth of field. You're gonna go to view, select camera, and scroll down to Arnold, and you can just turn it off right there. And now let's pick an angle that has like something like this. We can actually see it. Although it's actually kind of like in the shade, it's going to be hard to actually see what's going on. But let's select this area over here. Super shiny. Yeah, it definitely doesn't look that great. I mean, the braid itself, it doesn't look that great. They're going to have to actually do more carefully in there because it doesn't seem like it's actually doing the crisscrossing correctly, you know? And that's like even before I brought to XGen. But yeah, I'm gonna have to do it more carefully in there. But let's see how this thing looks like, and then maybe we can just add some noise in here and see if it creates at least like an effect that's a little bit more realistic. But the braid itself needs to be more braided, right? But it's good to know that the workflow works. It's just a matter of like doing a better job with it. So let's see. Yeah, definitely it's gonna do the job, I think. As long as I'm more neat with my approach in there. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna get braids for sure. This eventually is gonna work. Let's do just like add something here just as a test. So I have my braid in here. And then if I want to do, for example, create some flyaways, the way I create flyaways is normally like this. So for example, like I can add a modifier, and this goes to the hair as well. So I can add a modifier in here. I can just say sculpt modifier. And now basically like anything I do in here, I can use this slide, right? So I'm gonna click edit. And actually, sorry, I'm starting with the sculpt here. I have to add a noise modifier, sorry. So noise modifier there. And then now the noise, obviously, like you can control it and add more frequency, right? To make it a little bit more broken, stuff like that. But then if you want to add flyaways, for example, you can do them with multiple noises, noise nodes, right? You can use this noise node here just to add more of this crunchiness if you want to, or the magnitude you can increase just to get something that's more spread out like that, right? But then let's say you did something like this with the hair itself, but then you want to add like some flyaways, like something that's very, very detached from the rest of the bunch, right? So we can add another noise modifier. So we're gonna do this now. So noise, and then I can use a mask actually to control the entire thing. So if I use, for example, like a strong magnitude in here, you're gonna see I get something like this, right? So less frequency, but see like the magnitude is just like it's controlling the entire thing, right? I can even add like more here, like 20, let's say, right? So something like that is very messy all the way across the board. But then we can filter this. We can actually just make a few of them to do this kind of effect. So you can do that by using a mask, because the mask controls, right, what's going on in there. So you can click this little checker and you can add a noise. Switch from billow to Perlin noise. And then it's gonna be all here in the frequency. So I'm gonna go all the way up, maybe like even 200. And then I'm gonna control my amplitude and the threshold here. So here you see like most of the hair is being controlled, right? So it's creating that effect. And just a few of them are not being controlled. And you can see that by just messing with this. See, just a few hairs are moving in there, right? So that means that like if you crank the threshold all the way up, just a few spots are picking up. And that's basically the opposite effect of what we want. So what we do here is basically like you go to your effects tab and you just say invert, right? And then now you get just a few spots in there doing the job. So you can actually start playing with it and you get just a few of them to actually start. Let's see. I think I'm gonna have to crank this value here. Let me just show you. Under the color balance, you can actually play with this and actually use the offset. I don't know what's the equivalent, but yesterday I was actually playing with it. It was easier to control. I think you have to use a negative in here. So let's try. We start with -1. Yeah. So we're starting here around this area here. It doesn't move anything. And then just here, just a few of them start to move. So let's just try to crank this and then bring this one down. And let's play it with threshold again. So you get just a few of them to actually misbehave in there. You can go back and forth between this and then the color. Let's see the gain here if I even go higher. Yeah, it's basically like it's a matter of like seeing how much of that, you know, it's like what's the percentage of them you want to go and basically like get the flyaways. This can work for everything, you know. So it kind of adds this nice little touch of like, you know, it's like some flyaways and very random stuff. It's good for all kinds of hairs, you know. So yeah, it's a combination. Like it's normally like using just the noise and then playing with the alpha gain. And yeah, sometimes you have to use this, you know, it's like the negative, just to filter out and just like get just a few of them to do the job. So starting here, just like those guys are doing it. And then you get more and more and more until you get like all of them doing that effect, right? It's just a matter of like how much you want to do it. So yeah, so I think what we're going to be doing, we're going to have to replan this so actually can use the time wisely with this. But I would say that there's another thing that's missing that we talked about and was something that Leo was actually asking, was the color of the eye. So I'm just going to jump back to that just for a second and then talk about that and show like how my texture is for this glare at this point. And then we go back to this because this is going to be the boring part. I'm going to have to repeat those steps and just like making sure that I plan the braids to look good from the get-go, just with the parameters in Paint Effects before I even transform into this. I noticed that they are looking a little weird before, but they're definitely not braiding too correctly. You know, it's like I'm going to have to actually play with the parameters in there and see how I can get them to actually you know, behave as actual braids. Maybe I'm gonna need like more curves or whatever I need to do, you know. But definitely the concept is gonna work. It's good to see. That's
Hey Chris,
yes.
maybe just an idea for alternative workflow. I've
Uh-huh.
tried long ago with XGen. I'm guessing it's also in the interactive mode. There's a tube, like you can create guides from tubes, basically from mesh.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then I think I saw that there's a braid curve brush in ZBrush. So you could actually create mesh braids in ZBrush and shape them the way you want, and then just convert them, use them to be a guide for curves.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. In ZBrush, you have like, it's one of those, how you call like the insert brushes, right?
Yeah.
There's one you just like you draw like a whole braid if you want. It's pretty cool. Yeah. I wonder like what is necessary for XGen. I mean, like because I remember like in our own workflow at work, I think there is you need to start the there's something to do with the UV, and I think the start of the braid has to be at the top. Like there's something about like the UV having to be in the right spot. Or I wonder like if in this case here's something coming from the ZBrush, if the vertex number 1 has to be at the root, you know, for example, like to be able to work, or if it is independent. Do you think it just follows whatever it is in the...
I didn't try that much, but when I did, it worked pretty easily. It just has to have the same loops going all the way through the mesh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool.
And then it follows, you know, just the topology.
Yeah, in that case, I would have to... yeah, that's the thing. Like how you create the roots, right? Like how you branch out from the braid itself to mix with the rest, because that's the main problem for me here is like going to be like how to branch out and actually connect back to the head, right? Yeah, it's something I'm going to have to experiment with it. But I'm thinking about like it's going to be really a matter of like getting like chunks of, for example, like I would say like maybe like 4 or 5 at the time in a very small area, and then bring them together and then do the same with another area and another area. So make like small branches and then turn them into bigger branches, and those bigger branches turn into the braids themselves. So that's going to be a little bit of work in there. But yeah, in the case what you said, I get it. It's just like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around like, okay, how they're going to connect to the scalp. You know, I'm going to have to sculpt that geometry to somehow do that. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's going to be a good challenge here. And hey.
Hi, Chris. Hi. And about the curve, when I use the mesh, transforming the mesh to curves, and then when you want the curve, the flow of the hair, when you really want the flow of the hair to start from the scalp and then going to the point, you just need to use there's a button when you can reverse the flow of the curve, and it's about a square and a triangle. I don't know, and if the square of the curve is really near the scalp, it's going to be nice. It's going to be okay. But if it is not, you just have to select the curve and then reverse it. I really don't know where the button is, but you just need to reverse it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look. And this is like within the paint effects parameters.
I think it's in the curve parameters.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look, man. But you know what? There is always a way to do it, right? I mean, like if I look at this, for example, I can see that around this area, they're kind of like crisscrossing nicely. But then when it gets around here, it's pretty messy in there. And it's also, I mean, like the way that I have them placing here, I think if I do more carefully the beginning of the whole system, I think I can get a better result, you know. The tests I've watched, like someone doing the braids to look nice, it was just selecting like basically like 4 faces, like for a ponytail, and it worked totally fine because it was a small tiny area. But here I'm selecting from a bunch of different places, and I don't have enough curves to catch all those spots. I think that's the main problem, you know. But yeah, and that, and also the parameters that I'm using to generate the curves, because it doesn't seem like they're again, like really crossing over. But yeah, but the whole concept, I think, like, it's gonna work. It's just a matter of like really putting some effort in there and doing more carefully. That's all it is. But let's take a look at those eyes and then just show what I have in here, because Leo is right. I mean, like I don't think I ever did like the eye painting or anything like in those classes, but it's because I really didn't think it was like that complicated in terms of the complexity of the painting, you know. So let's see if I go to the cornea here, let's see what we get. So I have my base color and the subsurface. Let's just expand the subsurface here. And then I have my cornea here. You're gonna see how crappy this map is. So let's see. That's basically what it is, you know. So for a lot of those guys, you're gonna notice that, you know, it's like those big veins in here, they repeat. So like those two ones here, you're gonna see repeating here and here and here and here. Because when I'm painting it, I'm using the radial mirror in ZBrush. And then basically like I'm painting like all the way across. So let's just do that if I show you here. Let's get, still have to go back to the eyebrows, by the way, I didn't finish yesterday. So let's just save this one so I'm not destroying anything I did. Let's do this one. And I'm gonna open the eye stuff again. Actually, I'm gonna open that map in Photoshop. That's easier to see what's going on. Let's get this. Oops, not this. File open. There's a lot of saturation in here that I'm actually countering in Maya, is one of those nodes, right? But I think the main thing is that it's adding some color variation. If I click like right in the middle here, my base color for the whole thing looks like this. So basically, like, it is almost completely white, right? I don't know why I have 254 instead of 255, but that's what I have in there. And then around here for this yellow parts, I'm using a color that's kind of like this, you know, with those values in here, 236, 215, 195. So for the yellow stuff. And then for the average of this pink in here, which looks very pink, by the way, if you just leave as is. So that's why I'm kind of like correcting in Maya. But if I pick like an area like this, it's basically like this values here, like 162, 110, and 15. And then the rest is basically like, you know, adding some of those variations, like this yellow I mentioned before, adding around this area here. But the fact is, like, this this white area is going to be completely transparent at the end of the day, right? That's basically what we're going to make transparent. And then all the veins and all this stuff, you're barely going to see them at the very edges of the eye. And then you obviously going to see if the guy will look up or down, right? But like I said, I mean, like, those are very simplistic, interpretation of the veins. Someone posted in our group a nice reference of someone looking up. So it's like you just see the white of the eye. That's a much better reference than this, you know, in terms of the color and also the type of veins and complexity you're going to find in there. But I can open here just to show you how I was painting this stuff. Let's see, eye. Is it eye or human eye? I don't remember. Let's see, I think it's just eye. Yeah, there you go. Eye, ZBrush. And then let's get this latest one. Yeah, the cool thing about XGen is that thankfully there's a lot of tutorials out there these days, and I just have to spend more time doing grooming, you know. And now with the braids is a totally different thing for me, so I have to actually, you know, really sit my butt for more than 10 minutes and then learn it. Because that's basically what I spend time doing, like 10 minutes looking at how it works. Okay, so for the way that I paint this stuff is just using the symmetry in radial. So for example, like if I have my cornea in there, I had this transform symmetry and I had the radial turned on here. So I have like radial count 8, right? And then I was using that brush that I showed you before. That's the vein thing. Let's see if I can find it here. It's funny that I can never find it. I'm gonna have to install that plugin that you guys told me. So that's the skin vein, and I have the antro vein stuck here. And for example, like if I have a red color, let's pick this one and make it even redder and darker and a bit more like that. And so basically like I'm painting and then sculpting at the same time, right? So I have the vein in there. It can be redder than that, something like that. So I'm painting and sculpting at the same time, because the important thing is to have this as a displacement, because you want to make sure that when you render your eye, everything reads like with texture other than the center area, because this has to be completely smooth, right? But basically like I use this technique to just like create a bunch of veins at the same time. So around here, for example, you can add all of those major ones, just like using symmetry, you know, so it saves you some time. And then the in-betweens, you can just like add some smaller ones, stuff like that. But a lot of those are not going to be visible. You're probably going to be seeing just those ones starting around here, you know, those guys around here. And in this area here, I try to add some like kind of like manually sculpted like that, very simplistic. And even those ones I just added, for example, like they start to look a little fake because they're too much in the board, and you can definitely see the repetition in there. So I basically like use the repetition mostly like for fillers like that. But then when I got closer in here, I would turn off the symmetry and then just do some custom ones like this, and then some handmade ones, you know. But in terms of the color of the maps, basically like those are the three colors I show you. And there's like plain white in here. I gave you the value for the yellow stuff, and then for the pink. But then if you look at Maya, for example, there's a lot going on in there because I'm kind of correcting a lot of stuff. So for example, like for the color gain, instead of like being completely white in here, what I'm doing for this guy here specifically, I'm actually adding this gradient in here. And this color here, for example, it's kind of yellow, because my intention was to actually make his eyes a little bit more yellow, you know, based on some references that I had. So basically like I wanted to have this kind of feeling. Let's see if I have like a close up here somewhere. This guy. So yeah, instead of like being completely white, for my wife, for example, I did her eyes, I turned like the sclera very, very, very pale, very white. And then for some of the other guys who are a little bit more grayish, and then for this guy here's a little bit more yellow. So I normally use a ramp plugged into that channel, which is the color gain, right? With a little ramp in there, and just like preserve the center part. I kept like black, so there's no gain in there. And then starting, because I mean like this black that I'm using here is just to create the little, you know, it's like, it's almost like around the cornea itself, covering the iris. It's not going to have any gain. I want it to be darker because I'm going to create that little effect that's kind of like a little dark circle around the iris. But then everything else is just like this, you know, it's like it's a combination of having a little bit darker, a little bit of a gradient in here starting before he hits the sclera. But at the same time, there is a transparency map that is actually reinforced this little shadow that creates the ring around the iris. So that's basically it, man. I mean, nothing too fancy, but I can, for example, like keep this guy here kind of visible here a little bit, so you can actually see, you know, like maybe to get an idea about the colors I'm using. But again, like the colors here, it's almost like a lot of the stuff are going to desaturate. If I render and it looks super pink, I'm going to probably desaturate in Maya, you know, and then use the same texture over and over again, but then adapting to each one of the characters. Some of them are going to push more like towards grayish. Some of them are going to be more yellow, you know, and that's basically it. It's just a matter of like having the textures and a nice displacement to represent the veins. And other than that, things should work, you know. Looks kind of okay from there. It still needs work, obviously, but yeah. All right. So what should I do now? Should I just?
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
You mentioned there's like, you don't have to go into crazy detail about this, but you use like two eye setups, like one's more complex than the other.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this one's the less complex.
Yes, this is the simple one. What's
like the main difference?
I was noticing like the refraction was slightly different. It looked a little bit better when I modeled my wife, but then just like it was mentioned yesterday, you know, it's like I had an impression like when I did the render of just the eye isolated, it worked really, really well. But when I put them back to her face, seems like I got a little bit of a double reflection. So like the back as well. And then I had to turn something off. I just don't remember what it was. But I think it was maybe like the back face or something I had to turn off. Yeah, overall, I think like those are the eyes I use for all the characters other than my wife. And they normally work fine, you know, just the way they are. So that's basically what I'm doing, like just to get stuff done and not worry too much about like, you know, it's like bug tracking things. I just kept it simple this time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So let's see what we can do now. I mean, like one thing we can do that I know is going to work, that we're not going to be wasting time, is going to be the hair in the nose. Let's do some nose hair here. And then in terms of the hair itself here, I'm going to be fighting it today and seeing what kind of solution I can get. And as soon as I get something that looks half decent, I can actually not redo, but I mean like you basically like recount like what I did yesterday, tomorrow, and then just tell you guys what to avoid and how to get that. But also there are other solutions like was mentioned by Mihan and Roger, you know, it's like you can actually use tubes to do that as well. It's another alternative. And then another one is to actually do a very cheap cheat on this whole thing. For example, like you can actually create a cylinder, and then you just like delete everything but the cap of the cylinder. So just keep the top of the cylinder, just a little circle with like 4 faces, right? And you can grow the hair from there. And you can add the braids to that as well, to those like 4 faces. And you use that one to actually move things around and place the braids, for example, starting around here. And then in this case here, all of those guys, the reference I noticed, they have some piece that's holding the braids in place. So for example, like it can be like a cloth piece or whatever it is. So if you do that way, you can actually hide the beginning of the braids in there. And then you can just like simplify your whole life by basically like just grooming everything towards that little circle, right? Until it ends in there. And then if you render, you have a piece to hide everything, you should be fine because you're gonna see as if everything was running and looking correctly, you know? So that's another alternative. I think there are many ways to approach the braids. My challenge would be to actually have it behaving as if it was in real life. And I'm still gonna try that first, you know, to see how I can actually make it work starting from the scalp. But if it doesn't work, I can totally cheat it. Eventually it's gonna work anyway. But for the hair in the nose, it's probably like not the most exciting thing, but it's something that's necessary to do. So I'm gonna be doing now. And then we're gonna be using our time more wisely tomorrow. Once I have that more figured out, I'm gonna take some time tonight to do some study in there. And let's do this. Just gonna paint some masking here. For the nostril hair, I mean like you see the nostril is very shallow here. I don't have a lot of forms going on. I normally make a little bit deeper at the end of the day. So I make this whole thing deeper. But it all depends. I mean, like, if you're seeing the model, like if the final portrait is going to be something like this, you're probably not going to need it because the hair is going to cover a lot of that. But if you're doing like shots from below like that, it would be nice if you have deeper so you can actually see that there's, you know, there's more shadow in there. The important thing is that the nose hair actually starts all the way around this ring, all the way across, because they actually going to try to shoot towards the normals, right? And then when you get around this area here, they're going to start getting kind of like going towards each other. And then they're going to create a nice little effect in there, you know, when you render. And it's always cool, you know, it's like you render stuff and then people look like, oh my God, he put the nose hair in there. It's kind of super easy to do and people get impressed very easily with that. So, and it's pretty cool, you know, it's like since you're doing the entire thing, it's nice to actually add hair to this area, obviously. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to paint that whole pocket all the way around here. Even around here in this area, you get some hairs in there, especially if you get older, you're going to see like this stuff start popping out of everywhere. Every hole in your body gets hair. Ears, man, like those old guys like have those super long hairs in their ears. It's amazing. Let's get that. So yeah, let's get a little bit more the bottom area as well. This is the kind of stuff like I don't need to expand this mask. I'm gonna get what I get because you can really get away with murder here with the nose hair. It's a simple thing to do. And just because I said it's simple, XGen is probably gonna get its revenge on me and give me all kinds of bugs. Yeah, something like that, I think should do it. Got 2 pockets in there. Maybe too much around there. Let's add a definition here. Or description. Why I call it definition? Create interactive nose hair. Now the amount is it's something that I don't think they have that on the interwebs, but maybe they do. Let's ask Google. Let's see. Number of hairs in human nostrils. Oh, see, they don't have it. Because I don't think there's a product for you to, you know, it's like for for hair loss in your nostrils. Because every time you look for those researches, you know, it's like they have stuff about like hair count and all this stuff. It's all from those companies that sell products for hair loss. So they have like from the Institute of blah, blah, blah. So they have everything, all the numbers in place. But I think like there's no interest to count like nose hair. So we're gonna try to find like a ballpark here. Let's say each one of the nostrils is gonna have like 800 to 1,000. That's it. Let's see if that works. So yeah, it's like 50. Let's see, 60 here. Too much. Yeah, 55. Okay. So at 1,000 each one of them. It might be too much though. Yeah, too much. Let's see. 45. Okay, something like that. And then for the count, I mean, it's nice when you have some of them curved. So we can use like 32 in here. And then for the length, let's start with something a little bigger. Although, I don't know if we need to use some curves in there. I don't think we need guides, actually. I think just the hair itself should be easy enough to manipulate. So let's try a length of 2. Oh, it's too much. 2 is too much. Look at that. Ah! Right, let's do it again. Create. The cool thing is that saves for you the memory in there. Maybe 1 is still too much. Let's try 0.8. Yeah, that's gonna work better. And then we can shrink some of them as well. Okay, so let's do some painting here. So it's sculpt. We're gonna use this main node in here. Gonna click edit, switch to my XGen, and then click the length one. And I'm gonna paint some length in here just to get a little bit shorter. XGen is funny because depending on the angle, it doesn't affect it. And let's see, sometimes what happens is that around here, yeah, I have screen selected. Sometimes because you don't have, you have like volume, for example, it doesn't affect. Let's try with surface. Let's see if we can actually catch some of those with surface. Yeah, kind of. And then obviously there's that whole thing that I mentioned before, right? That you can actually make a minimum length. Let's see if I keep at 0.5 here, what happens. See, some of them like always going to preserve a certain length in there. They're never going to go shorter than that. And then for the maximum length, let's try like 30. Let's see. If I do the opposite, yeah, so something in between that should work fine. So this is going to be super simple to just add a bunch of modifiers here. And then obviously, when it gets to this area here, we're going to need to go shorter. So let's make sure that I'm going shorter, much slower than this. So like, gonna make like an increment of something slow, kind of slower like that, 0.57. And this one is a little smaller too. So I can actually go smaller with those guys, but just like very slowly. Let's try minimum length, very slow, very small. Like really get those guys to shrink around here. It's funny because I have to keep spinning sometimes to actually affect some of them. So weird. Sometimes like XGen just doesn't pick the ones you want to pick. All right, so now let's add some modifier here. So let's start with with the noise. And you can even like, I think you can actually add some, I never use clump in here because I don't think it's gonna be, but I think in this case here I might actually. Let's try that. Just make sure that the clump has enough density, right? So let's just make this one like maybe like 10, maybe 20. Perhaps 30. And then we cannot, you don't need to go all the way up with the clump, so just like bring it down a little bit. And then let's just crank a noise in here. Noise. And then let's play with that. Frequency. Magnitude. You can actually preserve the length so it doesn't get too messy. So it all depends. I mean, like how messy you're gonna go with this. You can keep a little bit more straight or not. And then if you want like a lot of control, you can obviously use some curves if you want to. Maybe like a few curves, like 2 or 3 should do it. But I really don't need it. You know, it's like I just use a few of that. And then you have this the scale control that's like the default in here you can play with. Or you can add like a scale node, because if you add like a new node is actually nicer because those ones are the default that come with the when you assemble the networking here. But if you have an additional one, at least this one, you can control independently. You know, it's like you can just like reduce stuff and then bring it back as you wish. I got like those ones that are kind of messy in there. I can actually try to brush them down first. Let's try to brush those guys here down. Or actually up. Let's not be too messy though. Let me just freeze this part here. Even like to freeze, you have to keep changing angle sometimes. Let's see what I have for settings here. Strength 100. Fall off is at screen. Yeah, screen should be doing it. But for some reason I get like all kinds of, let's switch to surface. A lot of change. Yeah, it's pretty annoying. I wish it was actually selecting from any angle, but then sometimes you have to keep spinning around a little bit. And this guys here, I can actually go much smaller with it. Those guys here, or completely like shrink them to almost nothing, or bring them up. Just gonna do that. So now it's frozen. Let's just play with those guys. And I'm sculpting with the modifiers on top. So there's a noise modifier and a clump modifier on top. That's why when I move stuff around here, it looks a little weird. Kind of like almost like they're not behaving well. But you can always like turn off the noise and the clump, so you can actually see what's actually happening in there. Get those guys to shrink a little bit. And this is not helping either. My symmetry off. Something like this. And then the other side, I'm gonna just shrink those guys with no symmetry as well. And hope that it's gonna catch them. Like the ones I want to do, it's not even picking them up. Oh, it's so annoying, man. Those guys are being affected, not the other ones. Let's beat those ones. I'm gonna try to force those guys. Well, this brush is actually working with them, but I don't know about the scale one. Let's see. Nope. Not doing it. It's because of the surface. Let's try screen. Okay, that's better. And then obviously they are very simple tubes right now, right? So let's put the clump back and the noise back. It's a little messy there. The noise is still really strong. But they don't have like a lot of form to them, right? I have to add like some, let's add some taper. Let's go to the top node. And then the scale, I might have to get them a little bit thinner as well. Maybe not. I think they're actually okay. Might be a little too dense. You can remove some of them as well. But here, I can actually make this a bit more tapered. It's fine. And then just make this area a little thicker. Yeah. And then sometimes if you're poking around a lot, like with the sculpting brushes, sometimes some stuff gets very twisted and weird. And then if that happens, sometimes, especially like, there's one thing that happens if you have a noise modifier like this, and then you have a sculpt modifier on top of it. Basically, everything you do on that is countering what the noise did. So for example, like if the noise is making everything super noisy, and then you're using a brush like this one here to smooth something that's noisy, but doing that in a sculpt brush, you basically like it counters what the noise is doing, right? But that's just a sculpt brush. And then when that happens, if you do over and over again, it starts getting like very scraggly and things get very, you know, almost like the hair starts collapsing on it on itself. If that happens, you can have you have to do this. You click the top node. You can go to your nose hair base. At any time, you can just like click rebuild, you know. And then sometimes if you rebuild a bunch of times, a lot of the artifacts you had before with the stuff not working start actually working, you know. So for those guys around here at the very edge, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to freeze them. Freeze everything. Oh, here we go again. You can actually flood the unfreeze. I think I'm going to have to do this. Because again, like, it depends on the angle, right? It's annoying. But what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to my sculpt, and then I'm going to make things thinner around the borders. Let's make it symmetry off. And see what we have for the minimum width. Make it very thin. Oh, actually the opposite. I'm just gonna bring those guys down and make it very thin. Some of them, if you really want to make them disappear, you can just like put it like that and just like make super thin. And then you can even bring like the scale to help you out. So sometimes I cheat like that, you know, it's like instead of like using a mask to eliminate like the density, right? I just do a combination of like making super thin and super small, and then they basically just disappear in there. And let's see, like you can do a little bit more of a sculpt around here just to bring this stuff into other curvatures. Like that, just curving things a little bit with the modifiers on. See, this area here is starting to get a little messy. We can always rebuild if it's getting messy like that, especially around here. Yeah, that's gonna be a little messy right there. There you go. And then let's try to rebuild it and see what happens, if it's gonna change anything. Nose hairs, beard, papa. Here. 200, no, I don't need 200, I need 32. Yeah, I see like they start like repopulating in there. Yeah, there you go. And then again, I'm gonna just make those guys here thinner as well. If they're thin enough, they kind of like merge with whatever peach fuzz you have around. They kind of like become peach fuzz at the end of the day. And then now that we have there, I mean, like it's a little disgusting there. I can make a little shorter. I still can use my scale here to reduce things a little bit. I can use like a noise brush, right? A noise node to do something that looks a little bit more like scale variation. But you see, like those guys here in this nostril, they look okay. But in this one here, they kind of disappear inside. And I think it's because of the scale, because they are definitely there. I think I reduced the scale way too much. And they kind of like disappear. So you're just going to grow some of them back. It just became like, yeah, they became super short and then disappeared. Okay. Yeah, can do some work later, but I mean, like, it's not a lot, you know. It's like, it's the kind of stuff like you're gonna see from an angle like this, and it's totally gonna sell it. But you can keep pushing as far as you want, obviously, and make it look perfect. The best nose hair ever. It's not gonna be my case because they're gonna probably call it done pretty soon. All right, so we did some nose hair. And then for the eyebrows, if I show you, yesterday I added all that stuff. I created a copy of the eyebrows, but at the end of the day, I went back to this one here. And then I realized that the eyebrows that I was working on, like this one is kind of like, it's more like a normal kind of eyebrow direction that we normally use, right? Like basically like starting around here, they go more and more vertical until they kind of like almost reverse the direction around here. You get like some very spread out ones in here. Some people have like a connected eyebrow, like a monobrow, right? But then overall, that's kind of like the shape of the eyebrow that we go, like using that V little shape we did yesterday. But then I was looking at my references and I kind of like the way that this eyebrow here is, which is for that actor guy. He has like this type of eyebrow. So basically like it's low in here and almost like square in the bottom. And then it goes up around this area here and then down again. I thought those are very cool eyebrows, and they kind of reinforce the facial expression, you know, because the one I have in here, the facial expression is going down, but the eyebrows are located pretty high in here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just like, you know, do it again. Basically, like I'm gonna just eliminate this, make sure that I have my mask a little bit lower. And I'm gonna try to do that, you know, instead of have this area being the thick one, it's going to start kind of thinner and then go up. And then I'm probably going to kill some of that in the process as well. So as a combination of making bushy in here, see like starts a bit smaller in here and then it grows, but then it starts fading away in here. So at the end, you're going to have like more hair probably around here and a little bit less around this area. So yeah, probably going to be doing that as well. And maybe it would be cool to have a little scar in the eyebrow, you know, something like that. I still have to add scars to the face. I don't have anything going on. I was looking at this stuff here, for example. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, so these guys here, they all have scars. So like Native American scar face. Basically, that's what I put. So I got this guy in here. There's this other guy here that apparently he's very famous, Scarface Charlie. So he has this V in there, and he actually shows up like in different pictures, like this one here. But this guy has a very interesting one here as well. And at first I had that idea about like making the milky kind of like blind eye. But then I thought like, man, I don't think that's gonna, it's gonna be maybe, you know, it's like a little bit forced. So it's nice if I keep like a little bit normal, but then add some history by having some scar across the face instead of like just like one blind eye or something, you know. I even thought about like adding something a little bit more technological about the guy. For example, like adding some, you know, some like robot parts, or maybe like mimicking the shape of the hair into some type of like a very advanced helmet or something, you know, just to break up the complete like Native American kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm still studying. But this is what I meant here. For example, like you see the hair, the way it goes in here. There's all this stuff here that we can totally disguise it, you know. So just imagine like if I just groomed the hair all the way to this spot here into a cylinder, right? And then starting here, I had just like the cap of the cylinder, actually creating the braids from that point on. So that would be very easy to move around. For example, if I just like move the little cap around, I could bring this braid like to any place I wanted, you know. So that might be another option because, like I said, if I do like a Native American, let's see, braid. Yeah, in this case here, I mean, like it's going from the hair itself, right? But then in this case here, you see there's something attached in there. You know, some of those guys gonna have something holding the hair, and some are gonna be like straight from the head, right? So those are gonna be the most complicated ones. And if you look at this one here, that's kind of like what I meant, you know. Starting here, I mean, like you see this becomes everything else, right? So this entire area is grabbing the hair from the side, from the front, and a little bit from the top, and then bringing it to this point, and then the next one and the next one. So basically gonna have to plan how things are have to be untangled, and just like plug those little points into multiple areas of the head, and hope that that works, you know. So I think that's gonna be it, man, because yeah, a lot of those guys don't have actually that connect. This is a fake one, right? It's like, looks fake to me. Looks like it's plugged to the head. But this one is definitely a cool one. So many options here, man. Look at this guy. This is a cool one to see the attachment too. And how fast it goes thin too. This one is very interesting. Someone was asking in the group, there's a group like for grooming on Facebook, and they're asking how to create this type of hair. And that's an interesting one because you have to create the braid itself, but then you have to create another separate groom that goes from the scalp into them. So kind of like two different definitions. It's almost like you have a little, you know, clumping happening with those guys in here, and then the braid running on the top. So that's a, you know, it's a combination of different grooms in there, I think. I don't think you can do everything with the single one. Yeah, I have to learn more about grooming, that's for sure, man. But it's like at the end of the day, because XGen is so flexible about like how you can actually comb stuff like manually, that if I cannot get the result I'm looking for, I normally force it by, you know, painting a mask, like freezing things, and just like manually sculpting everything. So even if I have to do the braids manually by sculpting them, I'm gonna end up like solving the problem. But it's just like I'm looking for a way that's smarter. You know, I really don't want to fight with that much. So yeah, I think that's the starting, not the starting point. That's a good example in there for what the potential is for it. But I don't think I'm gonna start with this. I'm gonna start with my other scene. Save this one so I don't lose, just in case I need to go back. Braids 2. And I think I'm gonna reopen that one and just play a little bit with the parameters before I exported everything. Did I eliminate it? Now I don't remember. Did I save after I generate the curves? Maybe I did. So I'm gonna have to redo it. But anyway, it was just like, it was a test anyway. Yeah, definitely gonna spend some more time on it. How are you guys doing with your groom? Like, did you guys start anything? Like, especially you guys who are doing like based on the pre-recorded stuff. I noticed that like some of you guys are doing the groom, but yeah, it is the tricky part, right? Because like it's a whole new project, and the stuff I'm looking, for example, like an Artstation, there's some like masterpieces when it comes like to grooming. And you can tell that there's a lot of time involved. It's not like you're just gonna put a few curves in there and things gonna magically work. It's normally like a bunch of different curves, and it's like it's really trying to copy the style that you see, right? There's some tests of very complex braiding in the back, and then all the curves that are involved, like it's normally like a shitload of stuff, you know. It's a whole new project. Just open this one I had before here and see what I got. Yeah, I think I saved after I generated actually the curve, so that's not going to be very helpful. Loading. Yeah, I think there's a couple of parameters that can actually make the braids a little bit tighter. It's the kind of stuff I have to take a look at those tutorials and what the parameters are. The best way, I think, like is always like for you to poke around and play with parameters yourself. But then if someone is already giving you some direction, at least saves you some time of like research, you know. So probably going to be watching some of those videos tonight and doing some tests, and then whatever I learn, I just pass to you guys. And vice versa, if you have anything to suggest tomorrow, you know, like you find some link or whatever, you can share in the group, and then we can look at it as well. Did it load? Okay, it did. Let's see. Panels, perspective. Yeah, so this one was probably saved afterwards, which was dumb. I had to save when I had my stuff already in place. Yeah, so the curves here are basically like not gonna help us that much. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to redo it. That's basically the bottom line here. Gonna have to redo it and make sure that I have this well planned. Another thing I was thinking here that might help as well is to put my my curves starting from the scalp and going to this area here, and then basically like generate the curves later on and then reattach, basically like, you know, kind of like reattach the curves and make sure that they become a single one. So I don't need to do like manually, you know, it's like one by one and then go all the way over there. I can simply reattach them. The important thing is that I have the entire area that I'm generating hair from, which is this entire area around here, covered with you know, some of those points touching, you know, close enough to this border, so we can capture everything and then bring it to that point. I think that's the most important part, and I'm gonna do it, man. I swear I will do it. All right, guys, do you have any questions? Yeah,
Chris, one thing. So let's say when you were doing Jessica or whatever, or another person that had like, let's say little birthmarks, little moles. I don't know how they call it.
Yes.
Pintas.
Pimples. Yeah.
Yeah. Not pimples actually. Just like a little like pinta. Like
pintas. Like yeah, little moles. Yeah.
Yeah, little moles. Do you, besides of having them on the albedo, do you occlude them from any other map?
No, I actually keep everything in the albedo.
Yeah, so like the other maps don't, like they just go over it. They don't, like, it's not occluding that from the spec or anything else.
No. I keep the same. I mean, like you can go like very precious with it, right? And you can actually create like a little bit of a rougher surface to it. And you can actually paint, for example, like in your spec map, just like eliminate a little bit of the specking on top of that. But in the case here, I mean, like I try to do everything with, normally like it's located in an area that's not super specky anyway. For example, like cheeks or, you know, it's like the chins in areas like that. And then I normally like, I tend to sculpt a little bit of a porosity, you know, it's like in the sculpt itself. So it diffuses the speck. And I kind of keep like that, you know, simple. But
so you actually like accentuate those in the sculpt itself. All right, cool. Sweet.
Yeah, and another thing that I was trying with this guy here, there was a point that I was not seeing a lot of detail in his skin, right? And I thought like, okay, what I can do is what I did with some, I don't remember like what model was working on when I did that, but I actually instead of like using simply the scale, right? Like, so we have like a color for the scale in there of the subsurface, which is like a plain color just for the you know, it's a kind of like that average that's like a mix of like blood and fat tissue and things like that. So we get that little color that was given by in the manual of Arnold, right? That's the one we are using. But the thing is, like, I was not getting the result I wanted, so I decided to actually copy my albedo color, plug into the scale, and then shift the whole thing by using the, you know, I can show you here, to a color that was similar to that original color. So for example, what I'm trying to say is this. If you click the skin itself, so many nodes there. So I have my native skin in here. So at this point here, I'm not using anything for the radius, right? The radius is just that plain color that's given by Arnold's manual, basically. It looks like this. 1, 0.3, and 25 in RGB 0 to 1. And that's all I'm using. So it's like super simple. But at some point I was like, you know, it's like I could get more detail if I had something plugged in here. So when I need to do that kind of stuff, I can just click in this color in here. So that basically saves in there as a memory. And then you can plug the same color map, the albedo map here as a copy, not the same one, but a copy of it. You can plug in the radius. And then the color itself, instead of like having the color gain at like, you know, it's like white, or in this case here, a little bit blue, I actually click and I select that color, this one here. So basically like it shifts the entire map to a color that's the color gain becomes more like that. And then for the color offset, you can do the same in here and just like make it darker so it doesn't offset too much, but adds a little bit of that. So it basically like shifts the entire color to something that's similar to that plain color that we had, but still maintains some of the detail from the map. And that can help sometimes. But for some reason, like all the tests that I did, the best results I would get is when this was like really close to the maximum. So basically like it was almost like fully colored like this, like that original color. So basically like instead of like offsetting this just a little bit, I would offset quite a lot like this. And then the closest you get to a pure color like this, the better it seems to blend the whole thing. So I think that's useful, you know. It's like now, yeah, if you want to do the thing like to actually have more control, for example, like if you want the veins to read deeper in the skin, you can actually have that color painted all the way across your map, and then you can have just the veins, for example, like painted in there. You know, it's like a plain map that's almost like no color variation, and just like adding some color variations for areas of veins, for example. That's something I can experiment. But I'm gonna tell you that in areas that are just skin like this, it's almost like the less is better, at least in my opinion. You know, it's like if I go with the plain color, I get a nice result like this. If I start like getting too fancy with it, sometimes it gets a little, you know, blushed, and you know, some spots start like showing up too much. So it's always a matter of like testing, you know, so I can see how it turns out for you guys. But I kind of like things very simple, you know. It's like as long as it works. If it's really realistic, just like with the field maps, I just keep that way. And then if I feel something like you said, like the case of the little pimples in there, you know, it's like if something like, okay, that pimple looks way too shiny. So I just go there and just paint out that little speck and get it done, you know.
All right.
Cool. Yeah. How is your model going, man? It's looking much better.
Yeah, I'm having my main issue now is to actually get the skin speck to react correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like the breakthrough, like a little breakups on like foreheads and cheeks.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Do you have your micro bump applied already, or?
I do the procedural one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. But I think that maybe it's something that I need to just do like a way higher res render.
Oh yeah, yeah. I gotta tell you, man. Like one thing that I was noticing with this guy here is that if I had like two little samples, for example, if it's just like let's say like this one was rendered, I think like with 9 samples for the anti-alias, but anything lower than that, I would get like this effect that I mentioned before. It's kind of like a trap. It looks like the specular is kind of like diffuse, and then you believe that that's actually because you're using like a lot of roughness, and then turns out it's just a lack of samples, you know. So as soon as I start cranking the sample, this entire area here gets much more plasticky. It gets much more shiny.
Yeah, that's what I want to try tonight. Like,
yeah,
I want to leave it doing it to see if I'll get a little bit more of just to have like a more true result.
Exactly. Yeah. So here you see like I'm rendering at 9, but for the ones that I was looking to actually have like a better idea what was going on, I had at 14. So at 14, it was actually have like a very smooth render, you know, of those areas. And it looks very, very different. You'd be surprised the difference between a render with 14 and then 6. It's very deceiving.
I bet.
Yeah, it's very deceiving. Yeah. You think that the surface is rough, okay? Oh yeah, I think my roughness is perfect. And then you crank the anti-alias, man. It's like, damn, it looks like plastic, you know? So yeah.
Cool, yeah, I'll do some tests. Thank you.
And also one thing that I did, I don't think I mentioned yesterday about the skin, is that I messed up with a lot of stuff. And one of them, I don't know if it's going to make a huge difference for you guys, but just so you know, I plugged the cell noise here. And originally, when you're doing our test there, I had it, the preset was actually the alligator. So yesterday, actually, the day before yesterday, I switched to noise 2, and now I'm using that one. I was actually doing some close-up renders with a very plain shader, just with this bump assigned. And I thought this one, although it doesn't have the sharp lines that the alligator skin gives, it looked more natural, kind of like a little bit more of a noise breakup for the macro displacement or micro bump. So I kept this one for now. And that's basically what I'm using for those renders in here. So the micro breakup is definitely working, you know. It's just, yeah, it's a matter of like, what do you want to do, how to approach it.
Yeah, no, it's looking great, man.
Thanks, dude.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's still not happy with the kind of like, I think like the primary forms, you know. There's certain things here I want to change. Sometimes I look for an angle like this, looks a little flat. And then I was like, oh yeah, but some of them have a very flat face. But then I look like, oh, okay, so the jaw, it looks a little too long. And then I look at some of them, no, this jaw is way longer than the one I have. So it's so weird, man, because I'm so used to see, you know, it's like white people around me and and stuff like that. And then when you get like some other, you know, how ethnicities, right? It's always like tricky because it's not like, I mean, like I have a friend at ILM, he's Chinese, right? And I asked him like, so what about like what type of, you know, it's like you have a lot of ethnicities in there, you know, it's like how are they treated in there? I mean, like, do you think like there is some racism going on? I mean, and then he said, no, it's not racist, but people definitely think like people look different and it's very peculiar, you know, it's like, for example, like a black person living in China, you know, it's like, he said like more and more, we have more variation now, more people coming from different countries and everything. But when I was a kid and everything, it was like, they would never seen anyone like that. So if someone showed up like with a different facial structure, it would be considered like, you know, it's a different kind of creature, right? Like it's the same for me. I mean, like if I look at a Native American, I don't see that many, although we have lots of Mexicans in California, right? But I mean, like those guys that I'm looking at the pictures are kind of like the original dudes, you know, it's like, it's this awesome striking faces. The same way I see like another one that's very fascinating to me is the Aboriginal people in Australia, you know, those faces are amazing, dude. And I think I might go in one of those, maybe like the January one, go for an Aboriginal African, you know, not African, but Australian, you know. They're so amazing looking, man. Like the structure of the face is totally different. You know, the brows are super big and stuff. So yeah, so I'm having some difficulties, you know, it's like actually seeing, you know, it's like the structure without using any of my preconcept, you know, of what like a, you know, it's like this whole idea of like a Greek ideal that we use since we start studying art, right? Everything we do is all based on the proportions of the Greeks. And then when you get into something like this, it's like, oh my God, like those faces are incredible. You know, it's like they're so, it's so rich in terms of sculptural forms, but it's totally different from what you used to. I was talking to my mother-in-law today, and she mentioned that she actually took care of a family. The guy actually was a Native American from a Native American family, and he broke his neck. So basically, like he dove into something, I don't know if a lake or ocean, and he broke his neck, so he was paralyzed. So she was actually helping the family, so like the wife and the little kids. And she said like it's different, you know, it's like the texture of the hair is different. It's not like a hair like an Asian person or a black person or a white person is a different type of hair. Like every single person, right? Like out there, like those different ethnicities, we have like different textures for stuff, different color of the skin, you know, it's like a little bit more olive skin. I'm from Brazil. I have like kind of like a tan skin, you know, and it's just like all those differences are so interesting, but it's definitely like, it's almost like different species within the same species. It's kind of interesting, you know, it's like, yeah, it's very fascinating to me. So that's why I kind of like decided to do this kind of like ethnicity kind of thing. So I can actually train my eye not to see things like so biased and kind of like too idealized based on the Greek ideals, you know, so I can kind of like open my horizons. And I think that can help you to build better creatures as well, you know, instead of like always like you using that like a kind of bias towards something you think, you know, something that's a little bit more open. So I'm actually very interested to finish this guy, but I think he has more character now, definitely than they had before. And I'm looking for that life, right? Like, and create some that looks someone that looks alive, but also is struggling with those forms, you know. It's like still trying to, okay, he looks like a native guy now, but then what's missing, you know? It's like there maybe the face looks a little flat, and maybe the cheekbones, although they are big, the forms themselves look a little bit inflated, and I was like, maybe I can get some more structure and some sharper corners and stuff, and slowly like build up more interesting forms, you know. But first I have to get like a ballpark that looks interesting. So yeah, well, guys, I'm sorry I didn't have like a more precise approach for the braids today, but it's gonna come. I'm gonna figure it out because that's new for me as well, and we're gonna, you know, come up with something cool, and then I can share that with you guys. That's the whole point. Thank you so much, and I see you guys tomorrow. This is like we have another 2 lessons left, so you're gonna be thinking, talking about like probably like, yeah, I'm gonna be doing some more work on the hair tomorrow. Hopefully, I'm gonna have like in a better space to actually show you guys something better. But also anything that you might think about, like, okay, what's the stuff that's really missing at this point, something that we didn't talk about, and let's make a little list, and then we can come up with something, you know. It's like maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, and let's make sure that everything is clear, that we don't have like too many doubts about, okay, this stuff here he definitely didn't talk about, and I know I'm gonna hit that rough area that I'm not gonna know how to do it, and let's discuss that, you know. But the good thing is that we have another 3 classes from the past that you can actually refer to. But if there's something that you definitely didn't see anywhere, let's talk about it, because I want to make sure that you guys are getting the information, you know. And I'm sorry I don't have all the answers, but I'm just like you guys. I mean, like, I'm constantly researching, trying to figure it out how to solve problems. And sometimes I just don't know and I have to learn. So that's all it is. Thank you so much, guys. And I see you tomorrow.
See you, Chris. Have a good one.
You too.
Good night.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Let's keep cranking, man. I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to come up with. I mean, there's so many cool works already, you know. It's just...
I'm going to...
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to post something about the braids in the group right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, awesome. How's your guy going with the micro wrinkles?
I need to put more. I did some, but I think I need to put more on.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Maybe I'll post the
it's almost like it's not just like the micro wrinkles. Like, you have to get like some of the bigger ones as well in place, I think, you know. There are certain areas like around the nasolabial, you're a little bit shy with them still.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like just save a scene, for example, like you consider, okay, this is my safe take right here. So just don't touch that one. And then just take one, you know, so get one ZBrush and go to town with those details. Look at the reference you have and dig deeper, you know, it's like into those nasolabial, maybe like he has very interesting marks like in the forehead, right, in the eyebrows. Try to dig those ones deeper, you know, it's like, and do some renders and compare the 2 of them. So when you put like side by side, okay, this is the old one, this is the new one, you can see exactly in relation to the reference what needs to be changed, right? And then you can basically like, okay, I went too far in this spot here, but this area here looks really good. So I remember what I did in there. It's just like really go to town, you know, it's like, don't be too shy, because the whole thing is not to get right in the first time, right? It's just like you keep trying, and then eventually you just end up like nailing it. Sometimes after months, sometimes after a few days, but eventually we get there.
I have some renders and I'll post in the group, and then I'll refine them. Okay. I'm a little too shy about the wrinkles.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem, man.
So,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm here to learn.
Me too. All right, guys.
Can I just say something?
Oh, sure.
Quick question. Do you think it's better for render times to increase just the samples or the resolution? Because I've been doing some renders overnight on 4K with 8 samples. And it's like 8 hours for one frame.
Yeah. Man, it's like anything over 6 samples in there is going to start getting like very heavy. So my renders right now, I think I'm rendering at around, let's see, let's take a look. Although we cannot compare machines, right? I don't know what kind of machine you're using right there.
Yeah, I mean, mostly I got good graphics card, but I didn't care that much about processor because I usually work in games.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 9th generation i7.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, your processor is better than mine because.
Well, to me, it looks in the videos that yours is rendering faster, but I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I think it's because I have it's a dual Xeon, but it's like it's a not so powerful processor, but it's just like working double basically. Let's see. So if I look at my, where is it? Native American, and then my renders here. Let's see what time they ended. So I can have an idea about the time. Let's see, albedo and date modified. Where is it? Right here. Okay, so I got one done at 5. Let's see, starting from number 1 here. Okay, 12:03. The second one was 12:59, so it was like 56 minutes. And then the next one was at 2:01, so that was 1 hour and 1 minute, 1 hour and 2 minutes. And then the other one was 40 minutes. So that's around there, like between like 40 minutes and in an hour for each one of those. And the resolution.
And what are the samples and the resolution?
Yeah, the samples and the resolution I'm going to tell you now. So the samples I was using was 9, but the resolution is definitely much smaller than the one you're using, which is only 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So all those renders here, they're all 1,000. And you can get like enough detail, and it's perfect for posting on Facebook and Instagram, you know. But at 9, that's basically like between 40 minutes and an hour per frame. Which is,
I'll try that then, smaller resolution and higher samples.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like basically like what I'm using here is like 333, but you can always like play with this, you know. It's like maybe you don't need too many samples for your specular, you know. Or if you want to get like a little bit more like shrink wrap, like and really get a nice look at the spec, you can crank this one and keep it low in here. You can always play with those values, you know. It's like maybe the subsurface is getting too noisy, you can increase it, put 4 in there. But all of this basically like you're going to recalculate the number of samples at the end. And it's going to be always a combination of everything. There is a kind of like a little article I saw on the internet a long time ago. It's kind of like this, it's almost like a safe set of parameters to render anything with it. And I think they're using like 10 for AAA. And then everything else is like, it's, they give you like a bunch of parameters in there. They say like, okay, this should work fine for most of the scenes without like consuming too much time. But I don't know, I think like I did for a while, and then I decided to just like do my own thing and test different things. But oh, another thing I forgot to mention, I was using for my filter here a very low value, like it's 1.2. And I decided to increase it to 1.6. And I think I'm gonna increase again to maybe 1.7 and then maybe 1.8 at the end. What this does is basically like it sharpens, the lower you get with those values, sharpen the final image, the final output. And then there is one thing that happens with the skin that's very tricky. That you know, it's like sometimes if you crank the you know, it's like the sharpness too much, everything starts getting a little metallic. You know, it's like not metallic, but like rocky. The pores become like very dry. Doesn't matter how much you push your subsurface gathering, everything looks very dry, and it's because it's too sharp. So, for example, like if I have something like this, if I add like a mask in here. An unsharp mask. Let's see, like sharpen, unsharp mask. And I crank this amount here, for example, you get this kind of effect, you know, and that's basically what you're gonna get if you go too low with your samples in there, with your filter. And then at the end, it doesn't sell as actually skin, you know, it becomes too sharp. So that's why if you go softer like this, that kind of feels more like skin, you know, it's like it has like the subsurface in there, there's a little softness within the pores and everything. So it always looks more realistic, you know, it's like if you have something a little bit more soft. So I would say like try to avoid using extremely sharpness to everything. So yeah, maybe like I was using 1.6 here, but maybe I'm gonna increase to 1.7 and give even a little bit more softness to it, you know. Yeah, that's about it, guys.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
No problem, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chris. I'm having that sharpness problem.
Oh yeah, yeah. Try to increase that a little bit, man. Yeah. Okay. Anything you can actually do to add some imperfection, you know, it's like you can create, for example, like a little chromatic aberration, right? Like just don't overuse it, because some people overuse it and everything is chromatic aberration. But maybe a little bit of that can help sometimes, you know, just like to kind of like a little offset in the coloring. And if you do that, try to do it mask, you know, it's like instead of like going across the whole thing, select an area, for example, like outside of the model, and try to add chromatic aberration more like in the offset areas instead of like in the center. So, you know, you preserve in there, but then around it looks a little bit more, you know, it's almost like a misprint, right? It's kind of like you get that from the cameras as well. You get like more vignetting depending on the type of lens you have. The best lenses, you don't get a lot of vignetting and you don't get a lot of chromatic aberration. But some of the cheap ones, you get like a lot of chromatic aberration around the edges. So yeah, anything to simulate like a crappy picture always helps. All right, man. See ya.
See you.